Start now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. This week's Sedra is Parshas Vayechi, and the first Rashi is very well known in Vayechi. Now, usually between Sedras, or between Parshios, I should say between Parshios, so there is always a certain amount of space. There's a Parsh Stuma, there are different opinions, how much space a particular parsha needs, but there's always space between the different parshios in the Torah. The parshios are like the paragraphs in the Torah, and between different paragraphs in the Torah, there is a certain amount of space. But between the Sedra of Vayigash and Vayechi, there is no space. It's just the space of one letter, which is what you have between words. So Rashi mentions the question of the Medrash, since between parshios, between paragraphs, there is always space. So the question is, why is it that there is no space between the end of Parshas Vayigash and the beginning of Parshas Vayechi? So now it's very troublesome, this question, because the Torah and the amount of space that separates the different paragraphs in the Torah, that was written by Moshe Rabbeinu. That was part of the Masorah, the heritage, the tradition, the teaching that was given by Moshe Rabbeinu. But so the question is, so what defines a separate parsha? What defines a separate paragraph? What defines a separate paragraph is the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu made a space there. But if there is no space in the Torah, you can't say that why is there no space between these two paragraphs? These two paragraphs are one paragraph. What turns it into a separate paragraph is the fact that there is space there. If there is no space, it's the same paragraph. And to say that it has to do with the Sedras, why is there no space between the Sedras? The Sedras was something that was decided by Ezra HaSofer. Long after the Sefer Torah was written by Moshe Rabbeinu. So why should we say, what kind of question is it? Why there is no space? Moshe, it's one paragraph. You could perhaps start a new Sedra with the paragraph. And especially Rashi is a commentary. Rashi is a commentary on the Torah. The Torah was written by Moshe Rabbeinu. So what does it have to do with the way Ezra instituted the Sedras? So what I think is we could raise a question. The question is it the spaces that determines the Parshios? Or no, there are rules of where a Parsha begins and what a Parsha ends. But if there's supposed to be a separate Parsha, we have to put the space. But it's not the space that makes the separate Parshios. It's the fact that there are two separate Parshios that we have to put space there. And I think that Rashi clearly was of the opinion, and the Medrash was of the opinion, it's not the space that left the Parshios, but it's the separate Parshios that necessitated the space. So the question is, now we don't know the rules, but the Medrash certainly knew the rules. So the Medrash asked, since according to the rules, the beginning of Vayechi should be a separate Parsha from the end of Vayigash, so there should have been space there. So the question is, why is there no space there? Why is it a Parsha Stuma? And Rashi says, Lama Parsha Stuma. So the first answer, Lefi Shekaven Shenifta Yaakov Avinu, when Yaakov passed away, Nistamu Einehem V'Libam Shel Yisrael Mitzaras Hashibud. The eyes and the hearts of the Jewish people became sealed from the pain of the shibud, from the pain of the enslavement. Okay, there are a lot of questions on this Rashi, but I'm not going to focus on this part of the Rashi simply because of time limitations. And I'm going to focus on the second teretz of Rashi. Dovacher shebikesh legalos hasaketz levanav. That Yaakov Avinu wanted to reveal when will the ultimate redemption of the Jewish people, meaning Moshiach, when is Moshiach going to come to redeem the Jewish people? V'nistam mimenu. And it was sealed from him. Now, the question is, how do we see from the fact that there's space that Yaakov Avinu was held back from revealing to the Jewish people? And we have to know, why was it? Why was it that Yaakov Avinu was held back from revealing to the Jewish people when the Gula, when the redemption will take place? And I think now the spaces represents the parts of the Torah that were not written. It's true, the spaces represent Moshe Rabbeinu looking into the Torah after God dictated, told him over the Torah. So after he wrote it, the spaces is indicative of his thinking. But what was Moshe Rabbeinu thinking? Moshe Rabbeinu was thinking over the Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral tradition, that which was given over to future generations. So it's obvious that if there is no space where there should have been space, it means there's something that was not given over. Torah Shebaal Peh represents that which is given over orally, that which was not written. So in other words, there's something that was not given over orally. And on the basis of something that's said later in the Sedra, the Medrash understood that meant what wasn't given over orally. What wasn't given over orally was when the Kates will be, when Moshiach will come. And the question is, why? Why didn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu let Yaakov Avinu reveal to future generations when the coming of Moshiach would be? Now, then also we have to understand, why did Yaakov attempt? Why was it significant in Yaakov's mind to reveal it at this time when Moshiach is going to come? Shortly before his death, obviously there is a connection between the enslavement of the Jewish people in Egypt, the Jewish people being in a land that wasn't theirs, and the coming of Moshiach. Between Yetzias Mitzrayim, between the Exodus from Egypt and the gathering of the Jews from all four corners of the globe and bringing them to Eretz Yisrael. And I want to try to understand what that connection is. Now, in the Haggadah on Pesach, so first of all, we see that there is a connection. We see in the bracha of Shir Galanu, the bracha by the second cup of the four cups, we talk about looking forward to being in Eretz, to returning to the Beis Hamikdash, to redo the service of the Karban Pesach, just as we did in the old days. And then we say in the Haggadah Pesach, we say in the Haggadah, and we know in the Haggadah there's a custom. Okay, that's not a halacha, but there is a custom of koshel Eliyahu. We pour a special cup for Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi, according to Jewish tradition, the Rambam says that that there was such a tradition. He's not sure that that's the way it's going to be, but he says there was a tradition that Eliyahu Hanavi will be the one who will announce the coming of the Moshiach. And and then we say also in the Halachmanya, we say Hashata Hacha, we invite everybody in. Kol dichven yese b'yechol, kol ditzrech yese b'yiftach. We say, whoever is hungry, let him come in and join us for the Seder. Whoever is in need, whoever has a requirement, let him join us for the Pesach, for this Pesach sacrifice. Now, how can we say that? There is no Pesach sacrifice today. And the Brisker Rav says, and it's really the simple reading of it. He says it's not just an invitation for this year. It's an invitation for next year also. So when we invite, Kol dichven yesem yechol, whoever is hungry, let him come in and join us for the Pesach Seder. Somebody who doesn't have the means to have a Seder, let him join us. But for next year, Kol Ditzrich, whoever will be required in the Karban Pesach, let him join us for the Karban Pesach. So in other words, there is a certain anticipation. Pesach at night. L'shana haba b'arad Yisrael. So there is an emphasis on not just talking about the Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt, about the past event, about the first redemption. But there is an emphasis also about talking about the future redemption with the coming of Moshiach. And it's not just talking. We're not talking about something far off in the future. L'shana haba b'arad Yisrael. Hashat hacha, unfortunately, the wish we had last year did not take place. But we hope and we look forward to next year Moshiach coming. It's unfortunate. I'm 71 years old. And I can say that when I was a young boy, there was this anticipation of Moshiach coming soon. But somehow, and that continued for quite some time. And the Jews in Europe had that anticipation. But for some reason, perhaps we as a people have become so secure that unfortunately we don't have that focus on Lashana Haba Ba'arad Yisrael. We don't look forward in the same way. I'm not just talking about the Jews in the concentration camps. I'm not just talking about the Jewish people who in the European towns. But in my own lifetime, and I'm not talking about individuals. When you talk to your average Jew, there was always a part of him looking forward to Mashiach's coming. And somehow that became not important anymore. Of course, everybody say they believe in the coming of Mashiach. But it's one thing to say, I believe in coming of Mashiach. It's another thing to anticipate the possibility that Mashiach will be here very soon. And I've read ridiculous articles where people play down. And as I'll show, that halachically, that is a requirement of every Jew. But, and it's interesting, there is one text in the Rambam, it seems to have been, although it's not in our regular Rambams, but it seems that is the major text. We say Baruch Shomer Havtachasel Yisrael in the Haggadah. Blessed is the one who watches over. And it's in the present tense, Shomer Havtachasel. Shomer Havtachasel, the one who watches over his commitment. Doesn't just say Baruch Sheshamar Havtachasel Yisrael, that he watched his commitment to the Jew, but it's in the present tense. Baruch Hu Shahakadosh Baruch Hu Chishev Esaketz. God calculated in the past tense. That's the way we have in our Haggadah, and even in the standard Rambams, it's that way. God calculated the kates, the end. There, kates means, if you have that girsa, chishev as a kates, it's talking about the Jewish people being redeemed from Egypt. God calculated the kates that the Jewish people were redeemed because God told Avraham Avinu 400 years, and the Jewish people were there only 210 years. But God calculated the years from the time Yitzhak Avinu was born. He used a different form of calculation in order to make the Gula, the redemption from Egypt, earlier. But it's very interesting that it seems that the accepted girsa, the accepted text in the Rambam, not the text that we have in our regular Rambams, but in the text in the manuscripts, the Rambam's girsa is HaKadosh Baruch Hu mechashev esakates, in the present tense. He calculates, not he calculated, even the redemption, but God is still calculating. In other words, the coming of Moshiach is dependent upon many factors. It has to do, perhaps, with the way we act. It has to do, perhaps, with the oppression that we suffer. But God is calculating the years to see, the days to see when Mashiach can come. So in the same way as God calculated the years regarding the redemption from Egypt, God is calculating the redemption, the redemption from Golas, from exile. He's calculating to see the circumstances that might enable it to be a shorter period of time. And it's interesting, we say, Matzah shanu alchem al shumma. Why do we eat this matzah on Pesach? We say the dough. The Jewish people left Egypt so quickly that the dough didn't have a chance to rise. Until God revealed himself to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. Ugolam, and he redeemed them. The Rambam adds one word, miyad, right away. And the question is, why does the Rambam add the word miyad right away? And my uncle said, because Sipu Yetzias Mitzrayim, the mitzvah of talking about the Exodus, is tied to encouraging the Jew. The Haggadah is tied to encouraging the Jew about the future Gula, the future redemption. And just like God redeemed the Jewish people right away, we have to believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could redeem the Jews right away. I've seen people write all kinds of nonsense, and they say that we shouldn't think, and they quote Gdolei Yisrael. I don't believe it. I think it probably was quoted out of context. You can't attribute such a thing to Gdolei Yisrael, that Moshiach won't come right now. But Go'olam miyad, in other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu could redeem us right now. The Chavetz Chaim made an emphasis on learning of Kachim. Why? Because he was a Kohen. And he said, we have to prepare to do the avodah. And it's well known that he told his nephew, who was also a Kohen, he has to learn Kachim because Moshiach can come at any moment. And we're going to need people to know how to do the avodah, the service in the Beis Hamikdash. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu mechashev esakeitz. Right now, God is calculating. So the Haggadah ties our discussion of the Exodus from Egypt with the ultimate exodus from Golus, from exile, the future redemption. But I have a question. And my question is it that the Chachamim, when they composed the Haggadah, they felt that this was an opportunity to, in a sense, encourage the Jewish people, to give them chizuk that Moshiach might be coming soon, to look forward to the coming of Moshiach. So they used the opportunity. It represented a very good opportunity. We see how God redeemed us once. He'll redeem us again. But it's not really essential and biblically part of the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, of Pesach night, of talking about the redemption. Or no? The mitzvah of talking about the redemption from Egypt is connected. It's not just that the Chachamim used an opportunity to give chizuk to the Jewish people, but it's connected. It's part and parcel of the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, of speaking about the exodus from Egypt. Now, there are two mitzvahs of remembering the exodus from Egypt. One mitzvah is the mitzvah Pesach night. The mitzvah Pesach night, we call it Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. There we talk in detail. We have the children, and if there's no children, others. If there's no others, just yourself. It's done in the form of question and answer. Hallel is included, all kinds of things. That's Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's reserved for Pesach night, for the Seder. But then there is another mitzvah, that's Zikaron Yetzias Mitzrayim, making mention of the Exodus. And the way we paskin, the mitzvah, L'man Tizkor es Yom Tzeischa Me'eretz Mitzrayim, Kol Yemei Chayecha. We make mention every morning and every evening about Yetzias Mitzrayim. We say, L'man Tizkor es Yom Tzeischa Me'eretz Mitzrayim. So Ben Zoma and Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah, they were of the opinion, L'man Tizkor, in order that you should remember the day you left the land of Egypt, Kol Yemei Chayecha, all the days of your life. Why didn't it just say, L'man Tizkor es Yom Tzeischa Me'eretz Mitzrayim, Bi Yemei Chayecha? What do you mean, Kol Yemei Chayecha, all the days of your life? So Ben Zoma said that has reference. They have to do it in the day and at night. And the Chachamim said no. Chachamim said that Kol Yemei Chayecha comes to tell us that we will mention Schiras Yetzias Mitzrayim not only in the present, but even after Moshiach comes, we'll be required to say the Parsha of Vayomer and say, Ani Hashem Elokechem asher hotzeisi eschem me'eretz Mitzrayim lios lachem le'lehim. So the requirement is not just in the present, but even after Mashiach comes, there'll be a requirement to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim. And the Gemara in Bracha says, very interestingly, it cites it to Sefta. The Gemara in Bracha says, Amar lehem ben zomel chachamim. So the Chachamim's opinion is that we're going to say Schiras Yetzias Mitzrayim every day. So Ben Zoma said to the Chachamim, and even when Moshiach comes, V'chi maskirin Yetzias Mitzrayim liyamos HaMashiach, will Jews mention Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Exodus, when Mashiach comes? But Halokfar Namar, it already says, Hine Yomim Boinu Hashem. Behold, days are coming, the word of Hashem. Below Yomru Od Chai Hashem Asher Helas B'nei Yisrael Me'eretz Mitzrayim, when people will no longer say, as Hashem lives, who brought the children of Israel up from the land of Egypt, Ki im Chai Hashem, but as Hashem lives, who brought the Jewish people back, they brought the descendants of the Jewish people back from the lands of the north and from all the lands wherein he dispersed them. So Ben Zoma seems to say that there couldn't be a mitzvah when Mashiach comes to speak about, on a daily basis, to emphasize the coming of Mashiach, to speak about the events of Yetzias Mitzrayim, because people, the Pasuk says, people in those days will only be focused in the future. They'll only be focused on the Gula, the eventual redemption. After Mashiach comes, people won't identify so much with Yetzias Mitzrayim because the miracles will be so great. The redeeming of the Jews from all over the earth. So Ben Zoma said, but in any case, we see that there is a mitzvah. There is a mitzvah not just to mention about the Exodus Pesach night, but every day there is a mitzvah to mention. And according to Ben Zoma, that mitzvah will not apply when Mashiach comes. Now, why is this important? Because there is a question that many raise against the Rambam. The Rambam says that he wrote a book, the Taryag Mitzvos, where he delineates the 613 mitzvos. And he mentions there the mitzvah. He mentions there the mitzvah of Sipu Yetzias Mitzrayim, the mitzvah of the Seder, the mitzvah of saying the Haggadah, the mitzvah of talking at length and in detail about the miracles that happened when the Jews left Egypt. But he does not mention as a mitzvah in the Sefer HaMitzvos, where he delineates the 613 mitzvos, the mitzvah of mentioning Yetzias Mitzrayim, the exodus of the Jews, every day. And we learn it out from a pasuk. So the question is, why doesn't the Rambam mention that? And Reb Chaim gave two answers, but one answer that Reb Chaim gave was, he says, we see from the pasuk, we see from the Gemara, the Ben Zoma said that there are days coming where they won't mention Yetzias Mitzrayim. They won't mention the Exodus anymore. But they'll mention about the miracle of the gathering of the Jews in the time of Mashiach. So he said, we see from this that the mitzvah of mentioning Yetzias Mitzrayim, we paskin like Ben Zoma, will not apply when Mashiach comes. and the Rambam, one of the rules of the Rambam is that the 613 mitzvos are only mitzvos that apply forever. A mitzvah that does not apply forever is not included in the 613 mitzvos. That's what Reb Chaim said. So Rav Zalman Meltzer, who was a student of Reb Chaim, he disagreed. And he said, no, the mitzvah will apply. It's just the nature of the mitzvah changes. Until Moshiach comes, we talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim. We talk about God redeeming us from Egypt. God took us out of Egypt. We mention it. But once Moshiach comes, we won't talk about that. But the same mitzvah applies. But we'll be talking about God redeeming the Jewish people in the time of Moshiach. So the mitzvah is a mitzvah forever. Just the nature of how we will do the mitzvah will be different. That's what Rav Zalman Meltzer said. So the question is, if the nature of the mitzvah is different, so it's a different mitzvah. So it's obvious that Rav Zalman Meltzer felt that the mitzvah of Zikaron Yetzias Mitzrayim is related to the mitzvah, related to the coming of Moshiach. In a sense, we could say it's a mitzvah of recognizing God as our Redeemer. Just before Moshiach comes, the best way to recognize God as our Redeemer is by mentioning Yetzias Mitzrayim. After Moshiach comes, the best way to recognizing God as our Redeemer will be about talking how God redeemed the Jewish people from exile. And we could say that the mitzvah is the mitzvah of talking how God freed the Jewish people. And the freedom began with Yetzias Mitzrayim, but is not completed until Mashiach comes. And we could say, so that's how Rav Zalman Meltzer. So Rav Zalman Meltzer clearly felt that there is a relationship, an innate relationship, in regard to the mitzvah of Zikaron Yetzias Mitzrayim. And we could say the same thing about Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. There's an innate relationship. And even according to Reb Chaim, who said that according to Ben Zoma, when Mashiach comes, there won't be a mitzvah of mentioning Yetzias Mitzrayim every day. Of course, Pesach night, there will be a mitzvah. But we could say the reason for that is, Reb Chaim didn't say that, but we could suggest that the purpose of mentioning every day about Zikaron Yetzias Mitzrayim, about remembering the exodus from Egypt, is on the contrary, to give encouragement to the Jew, to give chizuk to the Jew, that Mashiach will come. Because when we focus every day on God taking us out of Egypt, how God took us out of Egypt and redeemed us, we are encouraged and our hope comes stronger that God will take us out of this galus, out of this exile, and return us to Eretz Yisrael. So, and in a sense, we could say, it's interesting, in Lubavitch thought, Lubavitch emphasizes very much the idea of focusing on Moshiach coming at any moment. I once saw, I think it might have been in one of the Sichos of Lubavitcher Rabbi. It says when the Chachamim said that we're going to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim every day, it says Lahavi Yemos HaMashiach. So in Hasidic nature, by focusing on Yetzias Mitzrayim, we bring the coming of Mashiach. Now, I want to explain why is it that according to what I just said, that according to Reb Chaim, we could suggest that the mitzvah of Zikaron Yetzias Mitzrayim, of remembering the Exodus every day, is a mitzvah to encourage us in the coming of Mashiach. Why? Why is it that way? Now, the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim, he says that there is a mitzvah to believe in the coming of Mashiach. And the Rambam goes further, and he says, not only you have to believe in the coming of Mashiach, but the Rambam says that you have to believe, you have to look forward to the coming of Mashiach. What does that mean? And I think I heard from my father, and I think my uncle actually writes it in Al Tshuva. Reb Chaim believes that you have to believe that Mashiach could come at any moment. In other words, if somebody believes Mashiach will come 100 years from now, then according to the Rambam, he's a kofar b'Torah. He's rejecting the Torah. Ram says, Mishaena mechake lebiyaso. He doesn't wait for his coming. What does that mean? That doesn't mean that we have to run around with beepers so I can get a message, when is Mashiach coming? But I have to look forward to Mashiach's coming at any moment. And looking forward means that I have to realize that it's possible. You can't look forward to Mashiach's coming at any moment unless you realize that he could come at any moment. And my uncle, the famous question, my uncle said, he mentioned this, that you have to look forward to Mashiach coming at any moment. He said, but the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva paskins, Ein Yisrael Negolan El B'Tshuva, the Jewish people will only be redeemed with Tshuva. How can we believe that Mashiach will come at any moment if we have to believe that Mashiach, that the Gula will come only when the Jewish people do Tshuva? My uncle said a remarkable thought. He said, our belief in the coming of Mashiach is grounded in our confidence and our belief in the Jewish people. We have to believe that the Jewish people could do tshuva at every moment. And so, in other words, the coming of Mashiach is based on the Jewish people all doing tshuva. Now, it's very interesting. In this week's Sedra, when Yaakov Avinu is going to tell the Shvatim, and according to the Medrash, that's the point where he wanted to tell them about Mashiach, but he just, it was removed from him. He wanted to tell them, Vayikra Yaakov Abana Vayomer, Hey Osvu Vagidu Lachem, Asher Yikra Eskem B'Achris Hayomim. Gathered together gather together, assemble yourselves, and I will tell you what will befall you then the days. And then he kafzu and gather. What is the difference? He kafzu v'shimu b'nei Yaakov v'shimu al Yisrael abichem, and listen to Yisrael your father. So he uses two terms. One is assemble, and the other is he kafzu, gather. What is the difference between assemble and he kafzu? Assemble means you have many individuals coming together. You have in the Congress, they all come together to vote. I don't think that gathering means to form a group. They assemble. They might call it a gathering. Hikafzu means to form a group, to become one. When were the Jewish people one? At the time of Matan Torah. At the time of Matan Torah, it says, Ke'ish echad b'leiv echad. And God said, I'll use this opportunity to give them the Torah. Because the acceptance of the mitzvahs of the Torah can only be done when they're like one person. Hikafzu, that's becoming like one person. Assemble. And the Das Genim and Balei Tosfos, the Balei Tosfos on Chumash, I think it's the Das Genim, might be one of the other Balei Tosfos on Chumash, the Riva, but I think it's the Das Genim Balei Tosfos. He says, why two statements? Heyasfu and Hikafzu. He says, Heyasfu, that's when they come back from the first Golus. Hikafzu, that's a remez, when we will come back in the future in the second Golus. When the Jewish people returned after the first Golus, they weren't all committed to Torah and mitzvahs. You look in Ezra and Nehemiah, you see the spiritual struggles. Of course, not all Jews redeemed. But there were many problems, spiritual problems. When they come back from the second Golus, when we will return from the second Golus, then it will be for, in a sense, to re-accept the Torah. Then it'll have to be hikavtzu. Because when I accept the Torah not just for myself, but I accept the Torah for all Jews. Kol Yisrael arevim zelazeh. And if it's not hikavtzu, if it's not keish echad b'leiv echad, I can't be accepting the Torah for all of the Jewish people. So now, Jews are returning to Eretz Yisrael now. We have a state, but at best it's just heyasfu. At this point, it's not yet hikavtzu. And it's very interesting. We could say that Yaakov was looking forward. Yaakov wanted the Jewish people. Why did Yaakov want to tell the Jewish people when Moshiach is coming? Because he saw Yetzias Mitzrayim, the exodus from Egypt, as the beginning of the process of the ultimate redemption. And he felt by telling them as to when Moshiach will come, that they will see the redemption from, because now they were going, in a sense, they were going into exile. The first Lashon in Rashi says that they were beginning to feel the golus, they were beginning to feel the exile to a great degree when Yaakov died. This time their hearts and their eyes, mitzaras hashibud, from the pain of the shibud. And they were going to look forward to the Gula. And Yaakov wanted them to understand that the Gula from Mitzrayim was only the beginning of the redemption. And that they should get chizik from that redemption for the ultimate redemption. So he wanted to reveal to them when that redemption will take place. But Nistama, he was not able to give it over. It was removed from him. Why did the Hashgacha want it removed? Because we have to look forward to Moshiach coming at any moment. If Jewish people will have a Masorah, that Moshiach is going to come in 100 years and 150 years. So they will not be looking forward. And it's very important for the Jewish people to the idea of achakelo. We have to look forward to Mashiach's coming. It's not enough to believe that Mashiach will eventually come. We have to look forward to Mashiach coming now. And the way we look forward to Mashiach coming now is by having faith in Klal Yisrael, that Klal Yisrael will do tshuva. And Yisrael Negolin Elabit tshuva. And that will be Hikoptsu, when all the Jews gather together as one person, and they'll be Ki'ish Echad, B'leiv Echad. So that's why Yaakov Avinu wanted to reveal the Gula, but that's why he couldn't reveal the Gula, because the Gula, it has to be Yisrael Negolan B'tshuva. They had to be Ki'ish Echad, B'leiv Echad, and they have to look forward to it at every moment. And if he revealed when the Gula would come, they wouldn't have that hope. And it's that hope that gives them the ability to survive. And I have to take exception with those who write articles and say religious articles, and even quote Dole Yisrael. I don't believe it. That saying Mashiach is not going to come now. According to the Rambam, certainly the way Reb Chaim learned the Rambam, to say that would be to be kofar in Kol HaTorah. It's possible that he said you should do mitzvahs, even shouldn't be dependent upon Mashiach's coming. That's possible. But chas v'shalom, to suggest that a Gadol B'Yisrael even thought that to say that Mashiach is not going to come now. And I want to make another mention. I started off, I told how when I was a boy, people looked forward. A lot of survivors at that time. And of course, the state of Israel was founded shortly before I was born. And then the 6-Day War. I remember in the yeshivas by Shalashudis, they used to sing the song, Zol Shein Zayin de Gula, Mashiach Zol Shein Kumen. Mashiach should come right now. The Gola Miyad. For some reason, that song was forgotten. I think the reason was political. I think because the Lubavitcher Rebbe emphasized the focus on the coming of Moshiach right away. So because of that, somehow that song disappeared. It's true. Our commitment to Torah and mitzvos cannot be dependent upon Mashiach's coming. But part of that commitment to Torah and mitzvahs is looking forward to Mashiach coming. Let us hope that we will be zocha very soon to see the coming of Mashiach. Okay.
Amen. Thank you very much. So is it correct to conclude to say that the Parsha determines the spaces, meaning that was given from Har Sinai, and it wasn't that Ezra split the Parshios or the Sedras?
That's right. That's right. It's possible that Ezra split the Parshios. I'm not saying, but it was a Masorah that was given. The difference in Parshios and Sedras, the Masorah was given to Moshe Rabbeinu. Ezra couldn't make up the Parshios. The Masorah was given to Moshe Rabbeinu. That's for sure. And about the Parshios. And the Sedras, I think, is sort of irrelevant because that was made by Ezra, the Sedras. But he's talking about Parshios. He's not talking about Sedras. And if it had been Ezra, Rashi is a parish on the Chumash, the way the Chumash is written, not on the order of the Sedras that we have.
Now, Rabbi Eliezer, I think you heard Moshe give a share a bunch of years ago about how many letters were in the Torah, and some of these things is connected to some of those ideas from that share. You could reach out to me after the share if you don't remember that. I had a question. What about like the Abarbanel and the Malbim and Daniel that your father used to quote, that there were times they would give dates when Moshiach was going to come?
So there was the Pshat and Psukim, but in other words, the way many explain it, even the Rambam says one shouldn't give predictions, but then he offered a prediction himself in the letters, the Geras Taman, I think. So in other words, there is a certain period, if the Jewish people be zocha, so it will happen at a certain time. But there is an ultimate date. This is the way many explain it. There is an ultimate date where HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in a sense, will force the Jewish people to do tshuva. Mabid lahem melech kahaman, or something of that nature, that the situation will be created that the Jewish people will feel pressure to do tshuva, so Mashiach should come. But till this time, in a sense, it's our own, we can bring Mashiach by acting in a particular manner, in the right manner. Now, it's as soon as the Jewish people do tshuva, Mashiach comes. There's no question about that. But at a certain point, HaKadosh Baruch Hu could determine that we have to create circumstances that will, in a sense, push the Jewish people to do tshuva to enable Mashiach's coming.
Any other questions? Please put them in the chat. The Itachishana, that's true.
That's right, same thing.
Yeah. How does one reconcile the hearing and anticipation of Moshiach with fearing the predictions of Zechariah?
the predictions of Schar that what? That
I don't know.
which predictions of Schar is he talking about?
Unless that's at the end of Makos. I don't know. I don't know what they're talking about.
On the contrary, the end of Makos, it's you see, Rabbi Akiva said biyadua. Now it's biyadua. Now
I guess they're talking about Gog and Magog, the war that takes only minutes and sounds like a nuclear war. I guess they're talking about Gog and Magog.
Okay, listen, there are all kinds of ways of understanding that. That's all kinds of ways of understanding it.
Also, I think the article that you're talking about, that person has written books and is trying to show that the Yud Gimel Ikarim of the Rambam are not accepted.
Let me put it to you this way. I'm sure there are people who wrote those books. I'm well aware of that. But I didn't have reference to that person.
Oh, because he wrote an article about it in the last 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I thought that's why you were talking about this.
No. I am not aware of that. And the person I thought you were talking about died already. So, okay.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Thank you very much, Ashikoch.
Okay.
Mirz Hashem next week, same time, same Zoom code.
Okay. Thank you.